3. And the message title is, Where's Your Focus? That's Exodus chapter 5, starting verse 19. As you recall from last week, Moses had gone before Pharaoh, and just like God said, Pharaoh didn't listen to Moses. But what God did not tell Moses is that Pharaoh made the work that Israel had to do even more than it was before. So we start at verse 19. And the officers of the children of Israel did see that they were in evil case. They were in an evil situation, a bad situation. After it was said, you shall not minish or minish aught from the bricks of your daily task. So they had to go collect straw. Before they were given the straw to make the bricks, but now they had to go find the straw. So, and they still had to produce the same number of bricks. Verse 20, and this is where it gets interesting. And they met Moses and Aaron, that is the officers of the children of Israel. And they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto Moses and Aaron, the Lord look upon you and judge, because you have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to slay us. Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Lord, wherefore hast thou so evil entreated this people? Why is it that thou hast sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in thy name, he hath done evil to this people, neither hast thou delivered thy people at all. There's a whole bunch of interesting things going on here. First of all, the people find out that they have more work to do right after Moses had gone to see Pharaoh. They're not happy about it. Now, when Moses and Aaron had come to tell the people of Israel, I'm going to take you out of the land, I'm going to take you away from Pharaoh into the promised land that had been promised back to Abraham 400 years ago, we're going. It's like, yes, okay, yeah, go for it. We're behind you. Now they find out, after they talk to Pharaoh, that he says, the Lord look upon you and judge, because you have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants, put a sword in their hand to slay us. Well, first of all, you don't kill slaves. They're not useful to you when they're dead. So they're going to make their life certainly more miserable, but they're not going to kill them. So this is a little bit overplay. Second point that's interesting, he says, now the very Moses and Aaron that they were encouraging to go for it, now they're telling them, it's your fault. Well, of course, they didn't do it. It was Pharaoh. But anyway, it's their fault because they spoke to Pharaoh. Third point, which is interesting. Well, of course, it wasn't their fault. Pharaoh did it. But Pharaoh did it because, okay, well, we understand that. And then he said, you have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh. That is, Pharaoh now hates us and his people hate us. Okay, that sounds reasonable. But aren't you slaves? So there's not a lot of love lost here in the first place, right? I mean, he's made you slaves. Now you expect to leave this country and you expect that Pharaoh's going to love you because he's got free slaves and he's letting them go? How does that work? So clearly they don't have a focus as to what's going on here. If they're slaves already, and Pharaoh likes it that way, and he's got the upper hand, what in the world, how is there ever going to come around a situation where Pharaoh's going to love you as he sends you out of your country as freed slaves? It's not going to happen. So Pharaoh's obviously going to hate them when he kicks them out of the country. They don't know how God's going to do that, but they haven't figured out the fact that they're not going to be loved in the process. That's interesting for us. Okay, but I'll get back to that in a minute. And then Moses returns to the Lord and said, Lord, where hast thou so evil entreated this people? Why have you sent me? Well, God clearly didn't tell him what was going to happen. If he had a problem circumcising his own son, he's not going to go and do this when he knows that all the work's going to increase for all the people in Israel. Their slavery is going to get worse. He's not going to go. So God just didn't tell him. Has it ever happened to you? Probably. God tells you to do something, you do it, and then it's like, oh, there's unintended consequences. Why do you think God didn't tell you? Probably wouldn't have done it if you would have known. Hey, talking real life here. This is the real deal. He says, since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he hath done evil to this people, neither has he delivered thy people at all. God already told him he's not going to listen to you. What part of that didn't Moses understand? He's not going to listen to you. He told him that 5 or 6 times, but he's not going to listen to you. Don't get excited. He's not going to listen to you. And then he says, but he didn't listen to me. It's like, you got short memory? What's the deal? It's easy to have a short memory. Why? Because you want to remember the good stuff and you want to forget the bad stuff. We have selective amnesia. You know, it's like we all want to think about the benefits, but we don't want to think about the costs to get the benefits. So it says, well, how is it things got worse? Well, you know what? In Christian life, things always get worse before they get better. When you're in a bad spot, when you go to God, you can guarantee things are going to get worse before they get better. Why? God has to deconstruct something before he reconstructs it the right way. That's just how it works. So we come back. Now let's look at the dynamics of this. They're angry because the work increased. Well, like I said, there's a process involved here. Did they think Moses was just going to wave his staff and they were just going to march out of there with Pharaoh waving at them? It's just not. This is not the real deal. Clearly there was some fantasy going on here. We all like the easy way, but that's not reality. Tell me what's easy about life. I'll tell you what's easy about life, getting into trouble. What's hard about life is getting out of trouble. So, and then they're angry at Moses. What's interesting is that even though they're angry at Moses, they don't tell him, well, we tried you, you're finished. You're out of here. They didn't say that at all. They were angry at him. He said, God judge you for this. Well, he was doing what God called him to do. So yes, absolutely, he should be judged for this. He has no problem being judged for it. He says, because now you've made us look bad to Pharaoh. Well, they did not tell him to get out of there as leader. So they understand something. What do they understand? Yeah, things just got worse for them. But why would you get rid of him when things got worse? I mean, he made it worse, but in the process of making it worse, you can expect that things are going to get better. In the same way, you go to a doctor, you're treated, you have an operation, you're worse than you were before the operation. After the operation, you're worse. Why? You're cut up, you're sore, you're whatever, and it's like, but you did it because you know you'll get worse to get better. We understand it in the natural, but we don't seem to understand it in the spiritual. But the Jews here had enough sense to look at this and say, well, maybe we're not happy about this, but let's just back this horse for a little while longer. And then Moses, it really tells the story of where Moses is at in terms of his walk with God. Moses, of course, he doesn't want anybody to be hurt. He says, but you've made it worse since you sent me. Well, we know why. He didn't tell him. And then he says, hey, I spoke to him and you haven't delivered your people. He expected a fast process. We know this by the way that he speaks. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So it's like we understand that he doesn't really know God's ways, and he doesn't really know God, and he doesn't know what God is doing. All by that. And by the mercy of God, God just ignores it. He just continues on. Okay, we're in a process here. So we're going to continue. And it's interesting because chapter 6, verse 1, he says, Then the Lord said unto Moses, Now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh. Now just watch and see what I do. It had to start with a process. The interesting thing is, he had to step out in faith. He had to do what God called him to do, not understanding the repercussions. The repercussions turned out not the way that he wanted it to. But after he did everything he was supposed to do, what happened? God said, Now you'll see what I'll do. There's lots of people waiting for God to do all kinds of things. And it's never going to happen. Not that God won't do it. It's not that God can't do it. He's waiting for us to step up and do our part first. The cart always follows the horse. You never see one in front of the horse. We have to step up in faith. When we show that we're serious about it, then God gets serious. but we're not prepared to step up, do what's required, God's not going to work. Not that he doesn't want to, of course he wants to. He's ready to go now. But are you ready to step up? So we see, Moses stepped up. All kinds of unintended consequences falling out of this. The people aren't happy. Pharaoh's not happy. Nobody's happy. Not even Moses is happy. He can't figure out what is going on. It's totally different when we read as he goes on and he sees the ways of God. He spends time in the presence of God. He understands things differently. But this is the beginning. But even at the beginning, God says, now I'll show you. You did what you were supposed to do. You were obedient. You're confused. You're dissatisfied. You're not happy. But now watch what I do. You can't judge the end of the book by the first page. You got to read the whole thing through. And so everybody, including Moses, was judging what was going to happen by what had already happened. Can't do that. In the same way you can't judge, you can't drive your car with your face in the rearview mirror. Because what's in front of you has nothing to do with what's behind you. Where's our focus? Where's your focus? Where's my focus? Is it on what's already happened? I have to protect myself so that doesn't happen again. You're wasting your time. You can't protect yourself. Well, I got to be prepared. I got to make sure that I'm controlling my situation. I know where I'm going. It's like, what makes you think you can control anything? Where's your focus? On protecting yourself? On being careful? On being smart and prudent? Or is your focus just on God? God himself said, pursue me with reckless abandon. Why? Because when I totally throw myself on the mercies of God, he always takes care of me. I may look like a fool, and it doesn't matter because I'm still saved. Do you want to look smart, prudent, and fail? Or do you want to look dumb and successful? Really, that's all the choice that we all have. Where is your focus? And that's the message for today.